After suffering a setback at the U.S. Supreme Court, U.S. President Donald Trump is now moving to raise tariffs even further. Earlier this year, Trump imposed a 10% global tariff. Now he says he's increasing that rate by an additional 5%, bringing it to 15% overall. On Friday, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down the original tariffs, ruling against Trump's use of the 1977 law known as the International Emergencies Economic Powers Act. And the U.S. president had some choice words for the Supreme Court justices after the ruling.
The Supreme Court's ruling on tariffs is deeply disappointing, and I'm ashamed of certain members of the court, absolutely ashamed. I'd like to thank and congratulate Justices Thomas, Alito, and Kavanaugh for their strength and wisdom and love of our country. The Democrats on the court are thrilled, but they will automatically vote no. They're an automatic no, just like in Congress, they're an automatic no. They're against anything that makes America strong, healthy, and great again. They also are a, frankly, disgrace to our nation, those justices. Others think they're being politically correct, which has happened before far too often with certain members of this court, and it's happened so often with this court. What a shame. Having to do with voting in particular, when in fact they're just being fools and lapdogs for the rhinos and the radical left Democrats, and not that this should have anything at all to do with it. They're very unpatriotic and disloyal to our Constitution.
Justices Gorsuch and Barrett, are you surprised in particular by their decision today? And do you regret nominating them?
I don't want to say whether or not I regret. I think their decision was terrible. Yeah. I think it's an embarrassment to their families. You want to know the truth.
Supreme Court justices who ruled against this the policy, striking it down, are they still invited to your State of the Union next week?
They are invited, barely.
In response, the president pivoted to a different legal authority, Section 122 of the U.S. Trade Act, to reinstate the global tariff. In a social media post Saturday morning, Trump said the decision followed what he called a thorough, detailed, and complete review of the court's ruling. While speaking to reporters at Queen's Park today, Ontario Premier Doug Ford was asked about the Supreme Court's ruling.
The Supreme Court, it hasn't changed, thankfully. Anything here in Ontario or in Canada, we're still keeping an eye on Section 232, but make no mistake about it, President Trump still has a lot of tools, but I think it's the walls are closing in on President Trump. No matter if you saw him lose the vote and 6 Republicans cross the floor with Congress, then you saw the Supreme Court decision. We'll see how the Senate decision comes up. But I'm going to be on the phone full steam, and later on, I think in a month or so, I'm going to do a U.S. trip with the other governors. Governors are meeting, I believe, in Salt Lake City. Another group of governors, southeastern governors, along with other premiers, will be attending Salt Lake City, but I think that's closer to June. And then there's another meeting with the governors and premiers in South Carolina that will be down representing Ontario, along with other premiers and governors.
I'm now joined by Brendan Caldwell, director of Caldwell Securities Limited, to break this down further. Brendan, thank you for the time.
Boy, it's good to see you, Theresa. It sounds like a guy that's been boycotting American booze. He's going to the United States an awful lot. My children won't even set foot on the lower 48th, but he seems to be back and forth to the U.S. all the time.
Well, Brendan, we can definitely get into that, but I want to start with what your thoughts are on the Supreme Court's ruling over U.S. tariffs, and what do you make of Donald Trump's reaction to this?
Well, it's a lot. Let's try and... I thought Donald Trump's reaction was very much in character. In honor of all of this, I've worn the orange coloration here. But how do I just want to say? The tariffs weren't ever the point, as strange as that might sound. The point was to increase the power of the executive branch of the U.S. government over the legislative branch. He could have, I don't want to say easily, but could have quite conceivably got all the tariff deals done he wanted to do if he had brought Congress along with him. And in the first 100 days, 6 months, year of his presidency, I think he could have done that to a very large extent. So why not? The point wasn't about tariffs. The point was to make the executive branch, the president and his office, stronger. What he may have inadvertently done is reasserted the power of the US Supreme Court. And in a constitutional democracy, I'm not sure unelected courts need to be made stronger but it was reassuring, I guess, that the US Supreme Court actually stepped up and said, no, you can't do that. So probably a good decision for America, first and foremost. I think will also be a good decision for the rest of the world, pending what America does next. It would be probably a good moment for him to walk back, for President Trump to walk back this tariff stuff, but in characteristic fashion, much like his responses, he's doubling down.
And what impact might the ruling have on inflation expectations and interest rates?
Well, the market rallied on Friday when the ruling came down, but then all this talk of 10 or 15% increases in global tariffs have got the market worried. And as I'm sitting here right now, the market, the Dow is down 1 point north of 800 points today because they are worried what this renewed tariff battle might have, which is understandable. There were some countries that either had a deal or were close to a deal. That this renewed announcement seems to toss those things out the window. And then when it comes to Canada, weirdly, the Canadian market's not down very much, basically flat, despite the fact that with the Canada, U.S., Mexico deal coming due in June, and no real prospect that I can see of that being renewed in its current form, you would think Canada would be particularly impacted. So yeah, it's been quite an impact on markets and probably on the economy, but it remains to be seen how much is just smoke and whether there's actually any substance to it.
And what geopolitical implications do you see given the rate is now set at a maximum 15% worldwide and can no longer be used as a negotiating lever, such as threats of higher rates on a per country basis?
America does that. It's why they have 6 times the incarcerated population of any other civilized nation on earth. They say, well, you can either plead guilty and get 3 to 5 years, or you could fight us. We got a 97% conviction rate, and you'll get 30 years. So there is precedent south of the border for using that sort of power. Whether he can impose 10 or 15% is really up in the air. And the idea that Congress will necessarily approve tariffs when they're coming up to the congressional elections in November, whether just before that Congress is actually going to wade in and approve extending those tariffs beyond 150 days, if in fact they can be implemented, it remains to be seen. I think the geopolitical implications for some countries, it's probably good. If you were looking at paying 25 or 30% tariffs, looking good. But if you have been like Britain or Europe, where you just negotiated a maximum 10% deal or something like it, and now this tariff is going to be levied on top of that, I think both the Brits and the Europeans are kind of throwing up their hands and saying, America, let us know how you're going to honor your deal, because a deal is a deal is a deal.
Well, with everything happening in the U.S. right now, who has the most influence over your 2026 portfolio? Is it the White House policy, Supreme Court law, or the Federal Reserve interest rates?
I pray it's not the orange man. Ultimately, interest rates are the single biggest determining factor, and not necessarily the U.S. Federal Reserve. I think as much as Mr. Trump was surprised that justices that he appointed ruled against him, I think figuring that if there's anything buddy worse that can be bought, it's people who won't stay bought. I think his appointee and we've talked about this, to the chair of the Federal Reserve may disappoint him as well, because he has had a reputation of being more hawkish than I think Mr. Trump would otherwise like. So right now, interest rates, the longer term rates have come down, supposing that the U.S. economy will slow. But I think that remains to be seen. Right now, the U.S. domestic economy, at least as shown in the stock market, has been doing very well and may continue through the balance of this year, regardless of all the smoke coming out of Washington.
Well, Brennan, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Theresa.